You've probably heard this phrase before. Kids are too expensive. I know I have. But what does that actually entail? Today, I'm breaking down the wealth building moves to make financially preparing for a child a little more realistic. Hello, my fellow wealth builders. Welcome back to the Money Journey with Mila, the podcast for millennial women in their 30s who want to become wealthy on their own terms and in their own time. I'm your host, Mila. I'm your fellow 30-something-year-old woman who is on a mission to become very wealthy. Every week, I break down easy ways to start building wealth in simple steps. I'm here to help make managing your finances a little less stressful. If this sounds like something that you're interested in, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube, or hit the follow button if you're listening or watching on Spotify. So you've probably noticed it's been a while since I posted a podcast episode. I know, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. I've just been very busy with life. Life has been lifing, and I needed some time to decompress and just recenter myself so I was ready to create content again and provide valuable podcasts that you can benefit from. So I'm back and better than ever. Recently, I've been reading a lot of articles around the rising cost of raising a child in the United States. According to a 2026 Lending Tree study, the average cost to raise a child in the US from birth to 18 is now approximately $303,000, which comes out to about $16,000 annually. This is actually a 28% increase from the same study done in 2023. This has been largely driven by things like daycare costs, food, and housing costs. This is all on the up. And I can attest to the cost rising for housing and food. I just feel like everything is getting so expensive. So I can only imagine how much more expensive daycare is. And I've heard from a lot of parents that daycare is one of their biggest expenses. And these costs do not include things like extracurricular activities, vacations, and college costs. So, in reality, this number is probably a lot more. I've also read a lot about how people are tending to put off having children, or they've made the decision to not have children at all. A few recent New York Times articles stated that because of this, the birth rate has hit a historic low this year. People are having less children, which is an indicator of our anxiety around the future of finances. However, on the flip side, I've also seen that there is a rise in the fertility rates among women in their 30s and 40s. Women are tending to have children later in life because they want to be more financially secure. They're investing more in things like their education, careers. Now, women are really having the choice when they want to have children. And I'll link all of these articles in the show notes. These are just such great reads. And personally, this really intrigues me because my parents actually had me at an older age back in the 90s, which was a bit uncommon then. Like, a lot of people were having children in their 20s and 30s. One thing that I did notice, they were in a better financial situation because they were more established in their careers. They had more disposable income. And I definitely did benefit from that. And since reading a lot of these reports, I have been telling my mom that, mom, you're a trendsetter. See, like, you had children at a later age and now everyone's doing it. And this has really got me thinking about how women can become more financially prepared for motherhood and still build wealth. Like, how can we do both? Because as wealthy women, we deserve to build wealth, not only for ourselves, but also for our children. It will not only give us options, but it will also give them options and freedom and security and a more financially supported experience throughout their lives. So today's wealth building topic is all about how to specifically plan and save for kids before they're born. I think this is so interesting and exciting when it comes to like financial preparedness and financial planning because this is something that I think about. I'm not a mother right now, but I do think about the future and like financially affording and supporting children. So I can't speak from experience, but I have done research around this, which I want to share with you in this episode. But I've also reached out to some of my amazing mom friends who have had children recently and have shared really great tips on how they implemented financial preparedness and readiness before having a baby. I just want to thank my mom friends. Thanks so much, ladies. So let's begin. I'm so excited to dig into this episode as we have a lot to talk about. So to start off, I want to first talk about how you can save before having a child. You can actually start saving for college way before a child is a twinkle in your eye. And that's through a 529 college savings plan. It is a tax advantage account for education, offering federal tax deferred growth and tax free withdrawals for qualified expenses like tuition, fees, and room and board. And there are two types of 529 plans. There's a state sponsored savings plan and a prepaid tuition plan. The state sponsored plan is more of like an investment account. So this plan is usually offered through age-based options that automatically shift to more conservative investments as the beneficiary nears college age. But there are other choices that you can choose from. You can do a more diverse portfolio or an individual funded option. So it's very flexible. On the other hand, the prepaid tuition plan allows for you to lock in current tuition rates at eligible public and private colleges. So you are paying the cost of tuition today, and you are locking in that rate for when your child goes to school 18 years from now. So it like reduces risk. So these are two really great options. Just depends on what you prefer. Anyone can open up a 529, 529 savings plan if they are over the age of 18 and they have a social security number and a US address. So you don't have to open up a 529 plan. Your parents can open one up for your future children. And what's great about starting early is by saving now, it can offset the cost of higher education for your child in the future. And this makes me think back to when I took a certified financial planning course a few years ago. When we were talking about college savings, my professor told the whole class the cost of college is rising about 7% per year, and it will continue to rise. He like showed us this chart how like the cost of college has become more and more inflated every year. So it's not going to go down. He stressed to us, you need to find an alternative to save for college. You don't want to resort to taking out loans and getting yourself into debt. And what's great about a 529 plan is you can actually start with small amounts of money. The minimum to contribute is about $25. So you don't have to have $1,000 in order to start. And I've seen the benefits of like starting sooner rather than later. In college, I had a friend who shared how his parents spoke to a financial planner when he was younger, and the financial planner told them, hey, if you want your kids to go to college, you need to open up a 529 plan and start contributing to that. And they contributed enough throughout the years to put their child through a 4-year university. So, like, my friend told me, he's like, that 529 plan saved me. Like, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have gotten my bachelor's degree. So that is just like one positive about a 529 plan is you can start saving sooner rather than later. But other positives around 529 plans, and there's a few that I'm going to share, but I just think these are so great. The first is like you don't just have to use a 529 plan for 4-year university. Your 529 plan can cover costs for K through 12 expenses, apprenticeship programs, accredited schools, or vocational schools. So like if your child doesn't want to go to college, you can use this for other school costs. Also, some state sponsors plans specifically are tax deductible. And by contributing, you can lower your taxable income. About 30 states offer tax deductions or credits for contributions through a 529 plan. And in the show notes, I'm going to leave a link to all of the states that offer tax deductions or credits for contributing to a 529. And the good thing about a 529 plan is there's no income limit. So if you make 300K or if you make 50K, you can contribute. There are also high contribution limits to a 529 plan. And in the show notes, I'm going to leave a link to it. So, another question that you might be thinking about is what if my child doesn't want to go to college? So, if the original beneficiary does not want to attend college, the account can be transferred to another eligible family member. Say, if you open up a 529 plan and your kid doesn't want to go to college, you can actually use that money to go back to school yourself. A friend of mine, she actually like had opened up a 529 plan years before her child was born. But my friend decided that she wanted to go back to school. So she had contributed enough to like cover the cost for her master's degree. And she's using that to pay for her master's degree and not take out student loans. And once my friend starts working again and starts making an income, she and her husband will actually recontribute to that 529 plan. Also, a recent rule that just came into effect is under specific conditions, unused 529 funds can be rolled over into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary. So, say if you don't use all the funds in that account in the near future, you can then roll that money over into your child's Roth IRA. So, I want to share what I started off with. Like, how can you start contributing to a 529 plan before your child is born? You can open up a 529 plan under your name and contribute to it. And once your child is born, you can then make them a beneficiary. And I've done this like a couple years ago. I opened up a 529 plan under my name and I've just been contributing to it when I can. But when I have a child, I am then going to switch them to the beneficiary. I'll be contributing on their behalf. You don't have to wait until your child is born. You can start contributing today. The sooner you start saving, the more your money will grow. So another interesting thing that I want to talk about is like, say you have a state sponsored plan and you end up moving to another state. You can actually transfer your 529 plan to your new state that you live in. You can do this through two ways. A direct rollover, which is the best method, where the funds are moved directly from the old plan to the new plan, or alternatively, you can do an indirect rollover, which requires depositing the funds into the new plan within 60 days to avoid penalties. So this was a lot of great information that I shared about 529 plans. And I'm going to leave a link in the show notes of everything that I talked about. But before we move on to our next section, I want to ask you, have you opened up a 529 plan? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to know if anyone has started saving yet. Besides college savings, there are other ways to prep and save for a baby, and that's what we're going to talk about next. If you know you want to have a child, you can open up a savings account, like a high yield savings account, and start saving what you can for those costs that will come with a child. So you can start saving now, even if it's a few dollars. I actually have thought about doing this, and a few of my friends actually started doing this before they had a child. So they had some savings for those immediate costs that come when a baby's born. So now I want to move into financial steps you can take before having a child. I think that these steps are versatile. Like, it's just not things that you can do before having a baby. It's things that you can do to get your financial life together. And these are things that I have actually done. So first up is clear out your debt. You want to get rid of your debt so you have more money freed up because babies are expensive. You don't want to have any debt hanging around when you have a new beautiful asset, which is a baby that you have to take care of. And a friend of mine told me that she knew her and her husband were ready to have a baby once they paid off their student loans. They were able to save and like get ready for the baby because they didn't have any more debt. The next thing you want to do is you want to save up 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. Now, having a baby can be unpredictable and unexpected expenses can arise at any time. So it's important to set aside money for emergencies such as unexpected medical costs or even non-baby related things like car repairs. A few of my friends actually started beefing up their emergency savings once they knew they were going to have a baby. So I think that's a good way to move into the next point, like foreseeing like expenses that will come with a baby. And one way that you could do that is by updating your budget for a baby. So creating a baby budget. And you can start with a realistic view of your current financial situation. You want to assess your income, your fixed expenses, and your discretionary spending. You want to determine what new costs you'll need to absorb. From there, you can build a baby budget that fits your lifestyle. You can make small adjustments early so you can prevent financial stresses later. And a few of my friends actually did this. Before their baby was born, they got on a strict budget. They reviewed their spending, decreased their spending, cut out what they no longer needed. They looked over what they needed their budget to be when one of the parents were going to be on maternity leave or paternity leave. And they also considered, okay, how long can we go with being unpaid, like unpaid leave? So they made sure that their budget was accounting for that. The last thing that you can do before a baby comes is you can start shopping smarter. And a few of my friends talked about how they looked at secondhand stores or they looked at Facebook Marketplace and they really focused what they can find from a deals perspective. And if there was anything new, they tried to focus on things that could last them longer. If they needed to sell it in the future, they could get a good amount of money off of it. A lot of my friends also look to their family members or their other friends who had just had children for used gear and clothes so they could use that and not have to spend a lot of money on newborn items. The next thing I want to talk about is updating your insurance before a child is born. You can do this actually before you even think of having kids is reviewing your insurance plan. Review prenatal care and delivery costs because you want to probably estimate out how much you will be paying for those things and how much your insurance will cost because delivery costs and prenatal care will impact your wallet. And while exact amounts like vary state to state and by insurance provider, these costs do add up. And then once your baby is born, you want to make sure that you add them to your health insurance within 30 days of them being born. And I recently did this, like not for having a child. I had to do this with my significant other, adding them to my health insurance. And I realized that it's better to do it sooner rather than later because doing it after 30 days of the life event will only cause more stress and more confusion. Another thing to look into is a dependent care FSA. And some insurance plans do offer this. This is care for your dependent. It's a pre-tax benefit account used to pay for eligible dependent care services such as preschool, summer day camp, before or after school programs, and any child or adult daycare. And I think this is just great because it's a smart, simple way to save money while taking care of your loved ones. And I talked about this earlier. The rising cost of taking care of a child in the US is going up because daycare costs are getting more expensive. So if your health insurance plan offers dependent care FSA, definitely look into it. You can also lower your taxable income. So the last thing that I want to talk about is life insurance. And you might want to consider into looking into this when you do have a child or like if you do get married and there's two different type of life insurance coverages. There's whole life insurance which never expires and there's term life insurance which is when there's a term to it. And that can be like 25 years, but it depends on what you choose. Life insurance is a great benefit and you can look into taking out like one of these life insurance policies on yourself. But on the other hand, getting life insurance for a child, although it's not generally financially necessary, it can be a good idea for specific reasons, such as guaranteeing future insurability, covering final expenses, or building cash value. But it all depends on what would work best with your lifestyle and like your financial goals. So I would definitely recommend talking to a financial advisor about it. However, investments are often a better financial alternative. But one example of how I've seen life insurance benefit someone is freshman year in college. I met someone who told me that their parents actually contributed to a Gerber Life Grow Up plan. And by contributing to that plan, they actually used that for college expenses. So even though they didn't open up a 529 plan, they were able to use the Gerber Life Grow Up plan. So that's something that you might want to consider as a benefit of using life insurance. So I just think that's so great. All right. So I talked about a lot in this episode, but in the comments, let me know, what did you think of this episode? Have you done any of these things already? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You don't have to do all of these things at once. You can start off small and grow from there. After this episode, why don't you try doing a few of the things that I spoke about? Opening up a 529 plan, high yield savings account for your future offspring and the costs associated with that, making a plan to pay off your debt. And a couple weeks ago, I shared tips on how to pay off debt. So be sure to listen to that episode, and I'm going to leave a link to it in the show notes. You could also look into building an emergency fund. I also have an episode around that. But overall, by doing these things that I've talked about, you're not just making good financial choices today, but you're helping future you and future mini you. I had such a fun time talking about this topic today. I hope you learned a lot, but we are just at the tip of the iceberg of how to financially prepare and build wealth for your children's future. I want to continue to talk about this topic in upcoming episodes in a series I'm calling Wealth Building for the Next Generation. We'll talk about how to build wealth for every stage in your child's life. So if it sounds like something that you're interested in, be sure to subscribe to not miss out on next week's episode of The Money Journey with Mila. If you have a question for me or a suggestion to include in these next couple episodes, drop it in the comments or email me at hello@themoneyjourneywithmila.com. Be sure to follow me on socials too. I'm at Money Journey with Mila. I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye for now.